Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Liz Schaller. I'm the NIMAC director, joined by Stacy Fontenot, our expert Duxbury transcriber, who's talking about what she says is her favorite topic that we've covered in this series, math. Not everybody's favorite topic, but it's Stacy's favorite topic. So we're happy to have her here today. Before we get started, curious to know who has joined us this afternoon. So please go ahead and let us know in our poll which option best describes your role. Are you a NIMAC authorized user or state coordinator? Are you a NIMAC AMP? Are you a Braille transcriber not registered with NIMAC? Are you a TVI or paraprofessional or other? And if you're other, please go ahead and put your job title in the chat. I'll give you just another minute to finish up. I can't believe we're already on session 5, Stacy. I've really kind of flown by, I have to say.
Yeah, when I was looking at, oh, what are we doing for session 6? I was like, oh, how did we almost get to the end of 6 parts? Especially
I know,
considering how nervous I was for the first one.
I know. It has flown by. And I see quite a number of familiar
Great.
names here today. So I think some folks have been with us the whole time.
Awesome.
Great.
Welcome back.
Let's see. It looks like about half of our attendees today are NIMAC, registered NIMAC users. The other half, we have some Braille transcribers and TBIs in the audience today, which is great. And we have one more poll question because today we are focused on math. And so we would love to hear from you about your experience with math transcription. Are you a Nemeth transcriber? Yes, I'm all about Nemeth. I do both Nemeth and UEB technical. I only do UEB technical. No, I don't work with math or other. And if you select other, please do put it in the chat. All right, go ahead and end the poll and share the results. Let's see. So I guess about half of our folks do some Nemeth transcription, some other folks UEB, and then there are some folks who don't work with math. So maybe if there's been some barrier to entry, Stacy can help you get past that with her enthusiasm. Awesome. And we have a few responses in the chat as well. Let's see what folks are saying there. Okay, so I'm overseeing the Prison Braille program. I'm a TVI, but have a teaching degree in math and work with a lot of
Nice.
math. And so this will be relevant for you for sure, Rose. Great. Well, thank you. Thank you all so much. Let's jump in. Today we're going to talk about MathML tagging and NIMAS files. I'll show you how to figure out if the NIMAS file you're working with has MathML tagging in it. Stacy's going to talk to you more about Unicode characters, some kind of things that you should be aware of while you're transcribing math and technical materials, as well as some UEB Typeforms and Nemeth indicators. And then session 6, I do want to note session 6 next week we are going to do on Wednesday due to the holiday weekend. So session 6, we're going to have an eBraille overview that the NIMAC's going to present to you, share some information about the new eBraille file format and kind of what the timeline looks like for producing eBraille at this point. And then we're also going to have an overarching series question and answer session. Stacy's been pulling together lots of great resources for you. We'll answer some questions that we haven't really had time to get to in any of the previous sessions. So that will be kind of a double duty session. And again, it will be next Wednesday instead of Thursday. All right, so last session, we looked at how to make changes in your rear matter of your book using NimPro, including how to format glossaries and indices. We learned how to apply foreign language styles. I feel like so many people learned a lot about how to work with foreign language materials last week, which is great. And then Stacy covered how to work with transposed material and how best to account for the location of that material and Braille page sizes in your transcription project. And today, again, we're going to look first at NIMAS files and how to verify if your NIMAS file contains math tagging or MathML in the file. We're going to determine which DBT template to use for your project. We're going to learn what math-related styles there are in the DBT template and learn what types of content might not be tagged math. Your learning objectives for today are to learn how to identify an XML document with MathML, to learn about math templates and associated styles in DBT, and to learn about content that may not appear in MathML tags. Here's your resources slide. Stacy always pulls together some great resources for you, things to take a look at as you're working with math. And these are some different ones than we've had in the previous slides because they are more focused on the math content. And Alexa put those links in the chat for you as well. All right, so we're going to get started talking a little bit more about NIMAS today and MathML.
Do we have a poll question at this
Oh, yeah,
juncture?
we do. We do. Yeah, we are curious to know, have you worked with tagged math or MathML before? Yes, no, or unsure. Let us know. Okay, end our poll here. So the vast majority say no or unsure. So this is going to be new information for everyone. That's great. Okay. All right. Well, a little bit more about MathML. So MathML is math tagging that you can find in some NIMAS files. It is not a required element of NIMAS files at this point. So not every textbook or workbook in the NIMAC that contains math contains MathML tagging. Um, when you go in to download your file from the NIMAC, one way to tell if the file you're downloading contains MathML is to look at the full record details page. And if you look at the very bottom right of all of that metadata, you'll see an element called MathML. And if there is MathML tagging in your file, you will see that metadata field filled with either MathML 3.0 or 2.0. So that's one way to tell if your file does contain MathML. The other way to tell if you've already downloaded the file or if someone has sent you the NIMAS file, if you haven't actually gone in and downloaded it yourself, is you can open up the NIMAS XML file in Notepad or Notepad++, or even in a browser or something, and take a look at the very top in the declaration of the file, and you will either have the MathML declaration, which is snipped here on screen, or you won't. If there's no MathML in the file, this MathML section with all the little MathML bits highlighted, that will not be present in the NIMAS file. So it's a quick and easy way to tell if you have math tagging in your file or not. And Stacy's going to get in a little later. She's going to kind of talk to you about some situations where maybe you do have an NIMAS file that has MathML tagging in it, but there are still some expressions that might not be tagged as math. So she'll talk some more about some examples of that later on. But MathML in general makes math transcription a lot faster and easier because all of that tagged math comes in beautifully into Duxbury, and makes it a lot quicker and easier to work with.
Okay. Thanks, Liz.
Yeah.
So depending on if you're doing Nemeth or UEB math, you need to choose which template you're going to use in DBT so that the transcription will be appropriate. And between the two math templates, we have a certain set of styles that are appropriate for it. So when we're doing Nemeth with UEB, we have the styles here. We have math, math separation, math, text in math, and then a one-word bridge, and then math, NLE, Nemeth. That NLE is new line, something or other. So each one of these accomplish a different thing. Math is how you designate it. It inserts the required Nemeth code opening and closing indicators, and also changes what is within that style into Nemeth code. Math separation style is what you would put on your itemized identifiers like A period, B period, or the 1, 2, 3. It's also what you can put on, like if you have a period at the end of a sentence and you need it to be shown appropriately. And then math, text in math, that is where you would get abbreviations in, where um, if you have like 5 inches and it's 5 IN period, the IN period part you would designate with the style math, text in math, and then that way it would be appropriate. Otherwise, you'd end up not having the period be correct. And then we have the one word bridge. This is that really unique one for our updated Nemeth in UEB. It gets the 2-cell switch indicator prior to the word, and then it contracts the word. And then this math NLE Nemeth is really interesting. It's used really with tables and tactile graphics, because with the math style alone, you end up with a space before the closing style in DBT. If you use this math NLE, it doesn't have that space prior. So when you need it to be in cell 1 after your table, after your tactile graphic, it's there in cell 1. If you use the math style to do that same thing, it puts it in cell 2 because there's that required space prior. Okay. Now, the UEB math template, it has math styles in it. There isn't a separate specific guidelines for technical materials template. It's still the same English UEB BANA template that we would use for a straight literary transcription, but there are math styles within it. There's math again, and then math, text in math for designating what would be literary. Okay. Those are the styles that we are going to be talking about, or the templates in DBT that are the focus for math. Before we start talking about Unicode, I think we've got another poll question.
We do. And I don't see any questions in the chat, but if you do have any questions so far, Stacy's going to do a demo and walk you through all of this because I know it's quite a bit of information, but please do put any questions you have as we're going along in the chat too. All right, let's launch that next poll. Do you use Unicode characters in your work? Yes, no, or unsure? All right, go ahead and end the poll. So it looks like about half of our respondents said yes, and then the other half no or unsure. So I think this will be new information for folks too.
Great. Awesome. Okay, let's jump into it. Okay, Unicode is a standard for characters and symbols, and each character or symbol has its very own unique identity. It's semantic. That's what it is. That's what it should be. And there are numerous Unicode charts just organizing all of these different glyphs that exist. And when you search in F1 in the help for DBT, there is some great Unicode information in there. So just to step back and kind of give the idea of what Unicode is. So when we're typing on our keyboard, that's ASCII. We kind of interact with that when we're making our tactile graphics. When we want the, ED contraction, we put in the $sign. But that's just the way it looks. It's not the $sign in Braille. It's the ED contraction, dots 1, 2, 4, 6. That's ASCII. Very easy to enter on our keyboard. Then there's this extended ASCII, and that was a way to put in additional characters that had need. We have like the degree sign, we have some fraction indicators, our accented letters are found in this extended ASCII. We see those often entered by holding down the Alt key and using the number pad to enter the associated number for it. So on a Windows machine, holding down Alt and typing 248, you will get the degree sign in your document. I'm sorry, I don't know how to do that in math though, or on a Mac. So we kind of, when we're talking ASCII, that's kind of like the little sister, and then we have like extended ASCII. It's kind of like the middle sister, and then we come to Unicode. Who's the big sister? That the little sister and the middle sister, just idolize because she's fabulous. I'm a middle sister. Um, so this Unicode is expansive and extensible. It can grow. Within Unicode, each character chart identifies those characters and clumps them together. So you have Unicode charts for various languages. You have them for math. You have them for emojis. You even have some for Braille patterns. You have all these different charts that identify a very specific glyph. So let's talk about a specific chart relative to our talk today, which is chart 2200. This is the mathematical operators. The link is in the chat. It's also at the top of this PowerPoint, and then I put it again here. We will look at the chart during our demo. And it is great because all of the nuanced operators that we kind of run into are there. Easy to copy and paste into our material. If you ever paste one in and then you look at it and it doesn't translate properly, please let Duxbury know. I I haven't come across one. So, in these updates, they're looking at these and making sure all is good. And the best part about these Unicode characters is that when they are included in your NIMAS file, Duxbury knows what they are, and because Duxbury knows what they should look like in Braille, that transcription process is seamless. You're not having to go look through the appropriate code book to find what should this look like. It's already going to translate properly for you. So if you come across a time where that doesn't happen, reach out to Duxbury. Now, so when I'm giving you chart 2200 here that we're talking about, but not every math character is in this particular chart. All these other charts exist in Unicode, so you might come across that double struck R. There's actually a character for that. That translates beautifully in Duxbury. You don't have to go in and, say direct entry it or try to figure it out. It's right there. So the double struck R is 211D. That's its Unicode number. That's its entity reference. So that's great. How do we enter them? How do we get them into our file? So these Unicode characters at this time are between 4 and 6 digits. And I use digits in a very loose term because this is a hexadecimal entry. So we have 0 through 9 and then A through F. So when I say digits, the letters A through F also represent, a numeric thing. So just like we saw at the bottom of this page here, we have 00D7 representing the multiplication cross. That D is actually representing like 14 because it's this different system, not a base 10. So when we're talking about the 2200 chart, there are only 4-digit numbers in that chart. Other ones, like on our emoji charts, they're starting to get into 6 digits. Okay, so how do we enter them? Knowing multiplication crosses 00D7. In DBT, when we hold down the control key and the closing square bracket, a field comes up in order to enter the Unicode number. You type in 00D7, hit OK, and the multiplication cross appears in the file. When you're in Word, you type in, you just write it, right where you are, 00D7, and ensuring that there is a space prior to what you've typed. Right when you finish typing the number 7, if you hit Alt X, you can convert that over to the multiplication cross. This is on a Windows machine. On a Mac, I can't remember the name of the little program. There is some kind of like character map or something that does have these characters in it. Sorry. It's been 20 years since I've been on a Mac. Okay. So if somebody is on a Mac and knows how to enter these, please enter it in the chat. Okay. We do have another poll question for you before we get into some other nuances of a NIMAS file with its math.
We do. And we do have a question in the chat. Do you have the chat open, Stacy? If not, I'll just read this. It's a long one, but I can
Oh,
read it
let
out
me
loud to
open
you.
it while you do the
Okay.
poll. Yeah.
Perfect. Perfect. That sounds good. All right. Curious for those folks joining us today who do work with math. Do you use MathType or Equation Editor or another math entry program? So I use MathType, I use Equation Editor, I use both, I use neither or other. If you say other, please do let us know in the chat what you're using for math entry. We would love to know. Okay, and let's see. So we've got, so 4 folks use MathType, a couple folks use Equation Editor or both. A majority use neither, and then one person did say other. So let us know in the chat what you use for math entry. We would love to know.
So, yeah, I'm reading Rose's chat message here about Scientific Notebook. Is Scientific Notebook still supported? There was one of these math entry programs that I was going to get into, and it was no longer supported. So I'm curious about that. I don't have an answer for you, but my thought is if it's Scientific Notebook, maybe it's backscaled and it's not being supported. But okay. Um, Regarding Scientific Notebook and its associated templates, I would suggest reaching out to support at Duxbury and asking them this, because I can't answer that. It's interesting, though. I'm going to have to take a deep dive on that when we're done here. No worries about any confusion. We are talking math. We are talking about something I love. So give me something else to research and I'm a happy camper. So, okay, if there's no other questions at this time, let's jump into some things to be aware of when we get our NIMAS files. Please,
Great.
these are going to look very dense, but there's a reasoning behind it. So you look at a box of Cheerios, it's just a box of Cheerios, even though there's a million Cheerios in the box. So what might not come through in your NIMAS file tagged as math? So when I say isolated characters and math style errors, it's really be aware that these things may occur and they are not designated as math. So you will have to manually apply the math styles in order to have them translate appropriately, especially for Nemeth. Most of these are the kind of things that you can enter easily utilizing the ASCII or the extended ASCII table. Like super easy. So any type of money and percentage, primes and double primes, oftentimes they'll use, like the apostrophe and the double quote. Slash, when you're in Nemeth, if the slash means per, over, or divided by, that goes into Nemeth. If it's just like and, or, that's literary. The degree sign, the tilde, any type of positive or negative numbers, An angle can be not in there. That's another easy character to enter. Decimal numbers, again, just typing away, doesn't necessarily get tagged math. And the fractions 1/4, 1/2, and 3/4, those are entities in the extended ASCII table, super easy to enter, so oftentimes overlooked for being tagged math. The ellipses, when it occurs in math context, ratios and proportions, oftentimes you'll see this as, colons, single colon or multiple colons. These invisible operators, we'll look a little bit more at that, but those Unicode entities right there, invisible operators, Greek letters, chemistry, that easy to subscript. It can go outside of math and not be tagged. Enclosed lists, again, easy to just type in, and those won't get tagged math. Abbreviated function names, they're just regular old text, so they get overlooked. So you've got to be aware. Subscripts and superscripts all in general. Isolated signs of operation and comparison. The big example is, fill in the circle with less than, greater than, or equal. Oftentimes you see that and oh, this has to be corrected. Scientific numbers, shapes and arrows, they won't get it. Tally marks, those will come in all sorts of fun and unique ways. And then sometimes if you just are having lines spoken, but don't have a bar over them, a series of mathematical letters, those won't be tagged math. And this is one of those things that when we're talking about UEB math, sometimes you can get away with these things not being styled as math, and they'll kind of work right. But when we're talking Nemeth, they have to have that math. Any questions about that right now? No questions. I don't want to.
No questions. Lindsay did chime in. She has like kind of a longer to that question earlier about math editing and utilizing math picks. She has a process for
Oh,
that.
nice.
And then someone else mentioned Math Kicker as well as another good resource.
There are a lot of unique and new ways to take an image capture of a math equation and get it clean and ready for Braille. And we're seeing more and more of those coming on the market, either out of, like MIT as an open source or included in existing software packages. All right, so we talked about some things that might not be tagged math. Let's also talk about some things regarding formatting or excessive tagging or that single word switch indicator. So one of the big ones that always I come across is abbreviations are separated from their associated value. Those just drive me nuts. You can't have those on separate lines. I always replace that space with a hard space. That's how I do it. Abbreviations and text needing that text in math. So if you have, capital rise over capital run, rise and run should be designated with this math text in math. Otherwise, you're going to get cap R, cap I, cap S, cap E. When you do it with text in math, it'll double cap RISE. Any literary word in that math context that needs the one word bridge. Another one, whether it's math or not, are characters that are superscripted. Any of those reference characters, the asterisk, the dagger, the double dagger, or our trademark or registered trademark. A lot of times those will be superscripted, so you got to pull off the tagging on that. Words that are used in equations, kind of like what we were talking about with the abbreviations and text. So sometimes you have those are kind of like the same thing. I might have duplicated something on that. But okay. See, I got confused here. All right. Let's move on to tables because I think words used in equations is just me restating abbreviations and text needing. Okay. Table with math content. That's where we're going to need to use that math NLE style in order to get it appropriate. No less, tables are kind of a nuance in Nemeth. And they are handled in different ways sometimes, depending on what the headings are. The opening Nemeth indicator ends a type form. So when you have a passage, you'll only need the opening. I think I have a slide on that coming up. So, and then a sequence of math. We talked about that earlier, but it still falls in with this formatting component. Grouping indicators that need to be in the associated code. If you have a grouping indicator and it falls in Nemeth, you have to close Nemeth and reopen it. So this one's a little bit of a nuance. You can't, let me state it this way. You can't have a set of grouping indicators in two different codes. All associated grouping indicators need to be in the same code. That's the way to say it. Okay. And then any type of spatial material that needs alignment and format, it's, oftentimes we get those in NIMAS files and they'll be tables or some kind of, juxtaposition. So they usually need to have a lot of work done. Just they can't fly out often. So what might be good in the MathML, but maybe isn't coming through in DBT appropriately? So mixed numbers, complex fractions, oftentimes we'll see those not get the appended component in Nemeth for what those are. Barred characters, any type, barred characters is just an example, but anytime we have a book and then we have images instead of math, it's like, make me want to cry. So when you start doing more math books that have when you get more math books that have these NIMAS files, you start to learn which publishers are really good. And you kind of go, oh, what book do you want me to transcribe? Who is the publisher? Good MathML, I'll take it. Okay, moving along. Then we have symbols that look the same but are totally different. Remember, Unicode is semantic. So we have this interpunct, and then we have the dot operator. Those are two totally separate things. So if you get the interpunct, you can easily replace it by searching for that Unicode 00B7 and replacing it with Unicode 22C7. They look the same, but they're totally different and they translate completely different. Sometimes you'll have to go in and adjust for the contracted form in Nemeth of a bar over or a bar under for a single digit or character, Braille cell. And then enlarged grouping indicators in DBT, those often don't come in quite right through the XML and can be designated with the code big right before the grouping indicator in DBT. All right. So I said earlier about the termination of the type form. So if we have some text, so, we have a paragraph and it's got bold and then it's got some math. That math opening Nemeth code indicator turns off. It terminates the type form. You don't have to put the termination indicator at the end of it. So if it says, watch out for X plus Y, and watch out for is in bold, in this instance, you only need the opening bold style indicator. So you can either enter it by a style or you can enter in the code. For example, FTS tilde B. That's how you would enter the opening bold using your F5 even. And this is only for passages, UEB passages. If you have it as a single word or it is two words, you're going to want to have your opening and your closing type forms. But when it comes down to a passage, to make it so that that closing type form terminator isn't there, just use the opening style. All right. Word find and replace. Did we have another poll question here?
We don't, but I'm happy to stop and pause and see if anyone does have any questions. We have this one last section and then we're going to switch over to the demo. But yeah, if at this point anyone has any questions, please feel free to unmute or put them in the chat.
So the next two slides are more informational pieces. If you use Word, how to use some wildcards. So we're not going to go too deep into the next couple slides because they're going to be there for your reference.
I'm not seeing any questions, so I
Okay,
think
let's move on. All right, in Word, find and replace. There, you can either use wildcards or use without wildcards. And so I always replace all the line marks with paragraph marks. Um, that way, when I apply a style, it doesn't run over. And then any superscript or subscript, I change that out from being a style that's applied in Word so that it appears super or subscript, and I actually apply the Duxbury codes in Word. So this is all in Word. This is us styling up in Word that would then be opened in Duxbury. The reason I do this is if you use the technical notation style in Word, that's part of the BANA template, it strips out the subscript and superscript that you would see. So this kind of preserves that. So I've come across it. It really frustrated me. That was the solution. And you don't need wildcards to solve this one. Okay, using wildcards. I come across this all the time. So that caret 13, that's a paragraph mark. It's the ASCII number for that. And sometimes there's just weird things that happen with that. So if you start to find that your Word file is acting bizarre or you're applying a style and all of a sudden everything after it is also getting that style, it may be that all of your 13s need to be changed to P. And if you have extra line spaces, that first entry gets rid of all your line spaces. That second row is about if you wanted to find like all enclosed lists and apply the technical notation style to it. So then when you open it in Duxbury, it's in math. That's how it is. That is something that I use often, but you got to note that you need to apply that superscript and subscript on the previous slide before you do it. Otherwise, you're going to get X1, Y1, and lose all of your subscripting. And then the last two I think are the most valuable is all of those isolated sign monetary amounts and all of those isolated parenthetic percentages. That's the find what while using wildcards to apply technical notation. So those come in math. Okay, demo time. So we'll check.
yeah, let's see. I'm not seeing any questions in the chat, but please do feel free to unmute and ask your question out loud too.
Yes, for
This
sure.
was a
Please.
little over, I will admit, for me, this was a little over my head. I'm familiar with
I'm
MathML
sorry.
tagging and looking at NIMAS files, but a lot of this I think is very focused on like your techniques for transcription.
Yeah.
So, um,
So
yeah,
if anyone's confused or if you want, please let me know. So we're going to just look at the XML file. We're going to do some template look at in DBT. Let's look at how to do Unicode characters. Everything we just talked about, let's look at it here
yeah,
in demo time.
let's do
All right,
it.
so first, this is the file of that textbook exemplar. So you can see this beginning area, that's that MathML. So here's an example that's available for you to kind of look and see, hey, that's what it looks like. So this particular file does contain MathML. All right. Now, we have been working in NimPro with that textbook exemplar, and here it is. I'm going to move it to the left. And I'm going to put the PDF print of the textbook exemplar on the right. Okay, let me change my zoom here down so it's not so big. Okay, so we have icons. You can change just to do it again, review it, 6 key that in. Great. You can enter that in. We have a section then of fractions, and it's followed by an example of a binomial. The next page has complex fractions and hypercomplex fractions. Then page 20 continues with a hypercomplex fraction. And now it's superscripts and subscripts. So we can see watching it flow from our print in NimPro. Sorry, too many N's. Okay. Page 21 has radicals. It has a matrix. And we have another image here, which we can replace with Braille. Yes. And we're just doing that. So it's a little bit easier when we export this because there's only a few. And then we have modified expressions. Okay. In NimPro, I'm looking at a tree. This is page 21. This has 3 separate sections. And here are the 3 separate sections in NimPro. So it's sometimes very nice that our NIMAS files, when we look at them in NimPro, are not always by page, and we can have multiple entries in NimPro for that. It makes it very helpful when we get to our exercise material. So page 22, we have a spatial arrangement followed by exercise material. Here on this exercise material, let's use a wizard. Let's change our body styles to directions. Let's change our list styles to exercise. I don't really see any bold. It's no big deal. You know, remove what you need to. Go ahead. So now we have this exercise material formatted and ready to go. Okay, and then we have a what to watch out for, again, with this, what we identified and made as our pay attention. So there we just changed that one over. Very good, whatever. But again, we can see here, this list is happening after the exercise material, but because it was separated, it wasn't changed to exercise material. It stayed as a list, so that's very nice. Okay, page 23 of the PDF, calculator keystrokes. And way back in one of our previous sessions when I was talking about when you get your NIMAS file, look at that images folder and the throughout. If you see anything that's a calculator keystroke, it gives you an idea of that might not exist as text in your NIMAS file. So this is one way you can just cycle through in NimPro and come in, and you can replace it with Braille. You can replace it with the text. Since we're doing a Nemeth transcription, we can put the opening Nemeth code indicator, keystroke indicator. Hopefully I just did that right. I probably didn't. Okay. All right, at least we've got something there. At least there's something there in our file that's going to be exported that will give us the heads up when we're proofreading our Braille and ensure that it's correct. Final thing is our table in Nemeth. So we're obviously going to have to do some nuances in this. Okay. Chapter 2 gets selected in NimPro and then exported. You can export this as both a DXP and a DocX, whatever one suits you. I've already done it. Let's look at what I've already done and set it up for us, okay? Chapter 2. So this is what I exported out of NimPro from what we just did. This also is what I just exported out of NimPro. So here is the Duxbury that we exported and then the Word. So we can kind of compare and contrast. Okay, I have a question. Is my floating head over any text, or is it kind of okay?
No, you're fine. You're to the sides. All
Perfect.
good.
Okay. Yes, I did the keystroke backwards. It's $K. Okay. So at least I know. Go back and adjust that. Made the mistake. No, it. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to go bit by bit. I'm going to look over here in the Duxbury. I'll make some changes. Then let's look at what it looks like in the Word. So the first thing is we know we're going to be inserting this later into our project file. Let's make our fake header. So when we are laying this out, it's correct. We may need to remove an additional header or information when we do put it in our project file, but we'll cross that bridge at that time. We know this is going to start there, so let's just make it happen. That is our icon at the top. I just hit Alt-0 to get the CZ, and then I did Alt-2 to get the TXG2. That's just direct entry. All right. Now the math here, we've got some hard spaces that are separating out our lines. So we had, let's take a look real quick again at our PDF, just so we know what we're looking at. We're looking at this fraction area up here. It's just a list of fractions with various types of slashes or mixed numbers, a couple of equations that include a fraction. So let's first, so we get these hard spaces. That would sometimes you get hard spaces in NIMAS files because they're trying to align something. We don't need that because hard spaces actually exist in the translation when we do it. So F9 for the apostrophe, that's the hard space. Let's just replace it with a regular space. Okay. And that works because when you translate it here, this is the space where 3 used to be. And even though we replaced 3 hard spaces with 3 regular spaces, Duxbury knows not to do that. So it took and collapsed these 3 spaces to 1. So you don't have to worry about excessive spaces. Okay. In the Word, we have the exact same thing. We have hard spaces here. So let's see how to get rid of that in the Word by using our find and replace. Is it a special character? White space. Nope. A hard space is a caret S. And just replace that with all, with a regular space and replace all. Okay. Our next set has these asterisks. You can see, why are these asterisks here? Looking back at the PDF, they're just regular mixed numbers, 4 and 3/8. And then 4 and 3/8 with a slash rather than just being a regular fraction. This is why you will come across them. These NIMAS files don't just do duty for Braille. They also do it for audio. It also does it for large print. And in the XML, there are these invisible characters, and they influence what is supposed to be happening. That right there, what we're seeing in this section, that's an invisible plus. It's saying 4 plus 3/8, 4 and 3/8. So it's an invisible character so that when it's read aloud from the NIMAS file, it's read appropriately. But here's the interesting thing. If I want to replace an asterisk and get rid of it completely, DBT is searched and can't find it. Not found in the document. Why is that? That's not right. Okay, so in the PowerPoint, I talked a little bit about invisible characters. So I will show you how to get rid of them in Duxbury, but I want you to see what they look like in Word, because in Word, they actually appear as this boxed character. You know what? Let me do something here. Let me apply the Bana template and choose Nemeth. And let me zoom this up a little bit. Is that better? I bet that's better. It's better for me.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So I have highlighted this square with a plus sign. That is the same weird asterisk that can't be found here. And let's take a look at what happens when we translate it. There's the 4. It translates as these 2 minus signs. So yeah, there's a big error there. We got to get rid of it. How can we get rid of it? In Duxbury, you can search for any of the 4 invisible characters that I gave you, and it'll find all of them. It doesn't matter if it's the invisible plus or the invisible times. It'll just find it. So here, what we're going to do is we're going to find, I'm control closing square bracket, and I'm going to type in 2061. And it looks like nothing happened, but something is there because it's an invisible character. Hit OK, and it finds it. Yes, yes, yes. Let's just replace them all. But please, look on the right side of the screen towards the bottom of the Word file. You can see there's a square with a multiplication cross. That is going to also be replaced when we go here. So yes, go from the back, 13 ones. So here on the word side, we see in this equation, there's the multiplication with that invisible box designation. And it got deleted here as well when we did our search and replace. So that's how to get rid of those really annoying things. Okay, awesome. Okay. Let's see how to do that in Word, yeah? Word's a lot easier because like we saw in Duxbury, I couldn't copy, I couldn't paste, I couldn't make it that. It just doesn't work that way. But in Word, it does. You can copy this and find what and replace with nothing and replace, 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 replace all. Okay? But it did not get rid of our hidden multiplication cross. You got to copy and paste that one to replace it all. And there's also the function operator that you'll come across. It looks just like a function operator, the fancy F with two parentheses. Same thing, just replace all. Copy and paste or use the Unicode things that you had that I've given you to search and find. All right. So now we have kind of this excessive tagging as well. All of this section in Duxbury, each line has its own math. So sometimes you get every single thing is math. Sometimes whole chunks are math. Sometimes there's no math. Sometimes it's perfect. Sometimes it's not. So here's an example where we just have excessive tagging. Okay, so you can replace styles or remove styles very easily. And we had talked in previous sessions about how to use the code function to find a style. But that's when you're looking for the beginning, only one portion of the style, not both beginning and end. So you can actually find an entire style. And here is, we're going to look and find for math and replace it with nothing. And this radio button, replace style name, is what we want. We want to replace the math style with nothing. Why are we doing this? Let's find out. So yes, 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 yes. But no, here it is within a paragraph. I'm going to stop my search. Yes, I could have gone through and used my delete, but I wanted to show you how to do a search and find for that. Here, now I can come back through and I can make my selection, hit F8 and choose the math style. This is everything that just was selected. We need to have a space though before the math style. We don't need it before the ending style. So there's our space. All right, we're going to be starting to move a little bit quicker now because we are got to go. Okay. Here in this binomial, whenever you come across a binomial coefficient in XML, they're always going to be fractions. That's how MathML designates that a binomial should be done. DBT for Nemeth has a special code. This doesn't really work in UEB. NR for new row. And you can see NR just gave us the appropriate designation for how to display a binomial. Okay. Oftentimes you will see math sections. We're going to go down here. I'm going to keep in track here. You can see oftentimes that you will have tables instead of a list. You're going to have to just kind of strip out the tables and readjust as needed when that happens. Let's look back at our PDF so we just know where we are. We've gone to the new page here and we're in this complex fraction area. And while we're in this complex fraction, we're going to stay here and I'm going to zoom in a little bit. So this 3/8 over 5 is complex because it's got a simple fraction in the numerator with a number on the bottom. Here is where that is happening in our Duxbury file. Duxbury has specialized fraction indicators that designate the nuanced nesting codes for these. So when you hit F1, if you search for fractions, this DBT math direct entry will come up. Scroll down, and you will see here, table of fractions in Nemeth code. FS0 and FE0 are for mixed numbers. FS1, FL1, FE1 are for complex, and then we have 2 for hypercomplex. Just make a note that when you're talking about mixed fractions, FL0 doesn't work. That's the outlier. It still just takes on with the simple fraction. This appending of a number also works well for nested roots and indexed roots. So this square root and this index root that we see in the bottom one, you can put the number 1 and you can put the number 2, and that will give you the appropriate nested translation cells for that. But how can we do it here? So our outer complex fraction needs to be indicated. We can use our F5, FS, and code parameter 1 for a complex, and then delete the extensive one. 3/8 is our simple. We don't need to change that. But this FL1, let's change it a different way. Let's F9, and then we'll add the 1 at the end. And then FE, let's just add it completely by hitting F9, and then we'll delete it. So this section right here is what we're looking at. Let's translate it. And here we have Nemeth code indicators. Then we have the opening complex indicator, the closing complex indicator. There's the complex line indicator. All right. Down here we have 2/3, 3, and then these would get the same type of treatment in terms of the F1, the FS, FL, and FE1. But what's different about whenever we have it at different line heights. So in the PDF, I just highlighted the incorrect one. This is the one I'm talking about. That slash also has another code. So when you are looking at the 2/3, this is where we're looking at now. That 2/3, that actually should be FLS for fraction line slash. And if you go into your F5 and hit FL, there is no FLS, but in the code parameter section, you can hit S. and it'll become a slash. I'm going to copy and paste it to my other one. This is the section we just worked with. Translate it. Let me scroll up so it's a little bit easier to see. My cursor was on the line below. That is the FLS we just entered. It still this fraction still needs some other nuances to be displayed correctly, but that's the fraction slash code. Okay, so those are fractions. We've done the binomial. We've done, now let's talk about a matrix because we got to get going. Don't want to keep all your time, and I want to touch on everything. And this file is here for you to play around with. All right, so I am going to go back to full page on, before I do, when I'm looking at this in the Word, I'll just come in and type the number in where it's needed for the appropriateness. That's how I change it. Okay, so we've looked at that aspect, and we've looked at that, adding the S just where need be in the Word. All right, back to the PDF. We're going to scroll on down to the matrix here. And the one reason that we're going to scroll down too is pretty much superscripts, they come in beautifully. It's pretty rare you have to deal with some superscript errors. And same with radicals. They do a great job coming in. Sometimes just the nested ones like I showed you in the help that may need to have a 1 or 2 to get the correct entries. But the markup on those is straightforward and good. Now, a matrix. This one is one that I've only recently learned about when I talked with Duxbury. All right. In the table layout, you have an option for a matrix. Okay. Notice how when it enters our fake entry, we have 5 tabs, and then down here there are 3. So confusing. What the heck does that mean? Well, they've done this, so what you enter first is what are your lines? What are the things that are there? And in here we have vertical bars. There's a code for that. EVB for extended vertical bar. I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to go and hit end to the end of my line because the last thing of my matrix is also a vertical bar. 1, 2, and then -3 and 4 is on the second line. Okay, so 1, 2. Okay, and then I deleted the extras. Now here's what's weird is we have -3, -4, and we don't need anything else because that's the end of this small matrix. We need to have this be spatial, and we need it to be in NIMAS. So let's use the MathML code style. That one right there. And we'll see that our closing indicator will be in cell 1. I have an extra space to get rid of here, okay? But here is the EVB code. We only had to enter it once, but it entered it on each line. And it aligned things properly. So yeah, play with the matrix table thing. That's pretty gold. And if these were something, if it wasn't an extended vertical bar, let's say they were the curly quotes, you can use the code big. Uh-oh. I'll take a drink of water while it figures out what I'm, okay, there we go. The code big appends the appropriate Nemeth code things to show that's a enlarged grouping sign. So there's 2 fun codes for you. Okay, looking at my notes. Let's look at, let's go down to this modified expressions. I think I went too far, sorry. So this bar over X right here, in order to get the contracted form of that, there's a code. It says bar. E code, X and then the bar, translate that. And there's the contracted form in Nemeth code. The these bars are incorrect that are in this file. So when we look down, oops, sorry. Now we want to do the bar under X. That one, you have to use the US and UE codes for under start, under end. And we need to use the appropriate Unicode character. So control, closing square bracket, 2015 is the bar. So here's what we just did when we translate that. X, bar over, ends, contracted form. Closing this. All right. All right. And then I wanted to show you, let's just say, X plus Y. And let's say this is bold. This is just for our purposes, right? Okay. When we translate this, there is the bold terminator and followed by the Nemeth code indicator. That can't, Nemeth cancels it. Okay. So what we can do is you can just use the code for bold and you get the passage indicator, nothing at the end but your Nemeth code indicator. Okay. Now, that's pretty annoying to have your Nemeth code indicator right there, right? Like, why can't you stay together? You can select your stuff, line codes, and I'm always group. No, that's not right. Yeah, okay, sorry. Layer, layout, character codes, group. It enters a what looks like a colon and then a code that's a semicolon. So now when we translate this, look at that. We get our opening bold, passage indicator, no terminator, with our opening Nemeth indicator on the same line with the material to which it applies. All right, let's look real quick too at our table in Nemeth. Let me go to the end here. I'm going to put a few lines here so we can get it up at the middle of the screen. This is how I do tables in Nemeth. So this one doesn't, the column headings are in literary context. So the Nemeth indicator needs to go after the separation lines, the column separators. So new line. Math NLE, because we want the new line to happen afterwards, right? After the end of the table. If we translate this and take a look, we're not supposed to have any guide dots across the thing. So here's where I'll just hit a space and then I'll use a hard space. And that's, F9 with that. I think you can change how you do shortcut preferences right here. And I think one of these, when you install clean, is the hard space, but I don't remember that right now. Oh, it's Alt F2. Okay, look at that. We're learning together. Perfect. Now I have to hit F9 to enter my tab code, or I can copy and paste it from wherever. The last column needs a hard space. So let's translate this and see what we get. All right, we got rid of all the guide dots. Table looks good. We have it in Nemeth code, but we still have this blank space. this blank line, not a space, but a blank line. So, because tables want to have a blank line after them, right? So here's your other code. Skip line nullify, SKN. You can look in the quick codes because you can append these with numbers as well, and the numbers mean things. But when you do that, you can reduce down blank spaces. So that is what we just did. The last things that I wanted to leave you with, please think of any questions you have or anything that you want to see. Just knowing that that's wrong, right? That should be that. That was, I just changed my error on that keystroke. Couple things I want to leave you with. Nemeth, I years ago came across like the most common Nemeth errors that a proofreader sees, and you should check this for, before you send off a file. That main file that template we talked about in like session 2 about creating it for yourself, I would encourage you, if you find yourself constantly making a mistake, or if you've gotten something back from a proofreader that was odd and you needed to really think about how to code it up in Duxbury to get it to translate right, document it in there. And then that way you also have a reference of what to look for before you send off a file, and you'll be getting volumes back with no errors in no time. Also wanted to talk just a little bit about chemistry. Chemistry is that subset of Nemeth, and anything in it overrides what happens in Nemeth. And there are some nuances. Boy, it's its own, unique animal. The one that often I see is that in Nemeth, whenever there are comments or comments, the Nemeth, depending if it's on narrative, a 1-3 or a 1-5-3-5, whatever those, our narrative and our itemized, those are indented, blocked over 4 cells in Nemeth. So it'll be 11-11, 13-13, and then 15-15 being margin and run over. Those get blocked. Chemistry is different. It gets blocked over 6. If you are ever looking for some things, a keyword look in our current Nemeth code and our current chem code is sample transcribers notes. You will find transcribers notes to enter directly into your material.
Thank you so much, Stacy. Alexa did put the exit survey link in the chat if anyone needs to hop off early. And let's see what some folks added comments. Paulo, I think you added a question about the hard space.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
curious. I wasn't sure. Stacy, how do you do the hard space? Is it control shift or control space?
In Duxbury, I found out it was Alt F2, or you can hit F9 and enter the apostrophe. And in Word, I wanted to show you something else about Unicode since we have a moment. And now that I'm pulling this up, here I am doing, and in Word, it's Control Shift Space. You're making me think about it. When it's automatic, you just start doing it. But once you start thinking about it, it doesn't happen. I wanted to show you first, this is the Unicode table that I linked to. It opens like this. And then it has this big table where you can easily just select the character. The following pages give you the definition of those characters, along with another way that you can copy it from there. So that's what it looks like. Now, what if you have Word and you just want to put in a symbol? On the Insert tab, under the Symbols area, drop down Symbol, do More Symbols. And make sure you're in the appropriate font. I don't know why mine always goes to Wingdings, but you can scroll down. Let's go up. Let's use that. Here's 1/4, 1/2, and 3/4. What's fabulous is along the bottom here, you can insert it directly. It shows you the shortcut key for the extended ASCII where you hold down Alt and type it. Some of them need a 0 before it and are 4 numbers, some don't. But then also you have a drop-down list here to show that you can find the Unicode on that. So it also has a Unicode reference. So you easily can find a Unicode characters information in here. So this Alt 0188, it's pretty much a Windows wide system entry. So that also works in Duxbury. Okay, there we go.
Awesome. Thanks, Stacy. And in the chat, Lindsay said that didn't know about the group thing. I'm constantly just erasing and retyping to keep the indicator with the info. So that's great. And we'd love to hear from you in the chat or feel free to unmute and something that you learned today. I know a lot of folks came in not being math transcribers, typically as part of their job. So maybe you learned a whole lot, or hopefully you at least learned something, some nuance or some new way to do something that you do regularly.
Are we talking about the user group at all?
Yeah, in session 6, we'll talk more about
Okay,
that.
good. So I'm just going to do a pitch. There's a Duxbury user group. We're going to come back next week for even more information. But grouping indicators is one of my hot topics. I've been dying to talk about them. So
Oh, so
that's a
maybe for
topic.
August?
Yeah, I think that's what I want to do for August because they're
Great.
so powerful. And I just spoke with somebody working on eBraille and how important those can be rather than using page codes or new line kind of thing. So yes, I'd love to see everybody there. Oh, thanks, Alexa. Put it in the chat.
Yeah, that's the registration link for our Duxbury user group meeting. And like Stacy said, we'll talk more about that next week, but we host a quarterly virtual meeting where Stacy kind of does a deep dive on a small topic, not a big topic like math, just a small topic, and then plenty of time for discussion and questions. So
And
we would
if
love to
you
see you
guys are
there.
running across unique things in your transcription, let us know. So
Absolutely.
we can do deep dives on it. And thanks for joining us today on my favorite topic.
Well, I'm looking through the chat to see what else folks said. And please do let us know what you learned today. Lindsay says you can also add a code at the beginning and end of chunks of math in the Banner template, which is a game changer. Let's see what else. Oh, Jane says with math, I learned too much to mention. I understand. That's how I feel too.
Well,
Jane, I'm
Lindsay,
on your page.
I'm curious about what code we're talking about there. About the chunk. In the Banner template is what you were talking about in Word. Okay.
Yeah, let us know.
This is fabulous. Well, I'm just pleased as punch to have everyone here.
All right, Risa in the chat mentioned and put a link to an alt code reference sheet that's useful if you don't like to use that symbol drop down too. So thanks for sharing that, Risa. That's great.
Those ASCII tables come in tables and charts and all sorts of different formats. So I'm glad that you shared one that you found useful.
Absolutely. In our exit survey, which the QR code's up as well as the link in the chat, there's also a space to put questions, and we would really encourage you to add questions because we will incorporate those into our Q&A session next week. So please let us know. Next week we'll be focusing on eBraille and then kind of those lingering questions that we've had from just across the 6 series. So please do let us know if you have anything you're still wondering about.
And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the hardware that I have gotten over the years that has made my transcription practices more efficient.
Oh, awesome.
If you like electronic toys, you want to be with us for session 6.
Yes, there are so many resources for sure. Oh, Lindsay, I think Lindsay got back to you.
Okay, and Idle P. Timms. I'm going to look that one up. I'm not familiar with that one, so I will look it up. Fabulous. Ooh, I love a new code. Yeah.
Awesome.
Stacy, how do you learn these codes? Is it just by need, or do you look them up? How do
Okay.
you, yeah. Do,
So one that let me open up Duxbury here and do an F1. So
yeah.
if you look up the quick codes, DBT quick codes, it has an alphabetical listing across the top, and you can go and you can see all these codes.
Heart space you were talking about.
Yes. And and you can learn more, you can do more. Um,
So you,
I
when you need it, you just look it up
no,
on
I
the,
know
or
I
how
like
does,
a new code, that's like gold, man. I don't look these up. I come back next week for more. Um, I have extendable keys that enter codes as well. I have peripherals that I utilize to enter codes, but a lot of them I'll just hit F9 and I'll enter. Yeah. So it's funny when like Running Head, I've always kind of entered the codes or used it through layout, and then I find that there's a style. So it just goes to show that Duxbury has provided numerous ways for us to accomplish a task. So in whatever way you work or learn, it's available for you. And I love that.
yeah, that's nice to be able to have those different options. What works best for one.
Yeah, and so those idle codes that Lindsay has put in the chat, they're rather unique because they're not listed here and they're incorporated in like kind of the back end, kind of like the MCFS that do footnotes and whatnot. So I'm going to look a little bit more on that, but I'm going to show you another trick while I have you here before we say goodbye. Um, I have along my top here, like here's the online. I'm on my browser. This is just what we looked at here. Okay, I get rid of all of this and I just do duxburysystems.com/documentation. And I want to learn a little bit more about idle. Let's see if anything comes up about idle. So I typed in idle, a space, and then I put site : Google will now search just in Duxbury Systems documentation for idle. And here are all of the different pages on the Duxbury website. I'm going to make this smaller that have idle in them. Here, using Word to produce UEB with Nemeth code, idle PTIMs. And
There
then
we
we
go.
can, and there it is to create a pass through. Oh, I'm going to Lindsay, you got a cookie today. That is awesome. Oh, and there's something about Scientific Notebook. Huh. It's starting with 1212. It says you can use the UEB Nemeth here with math and with, okay. Well, our help file, just searching it, kind of gave us some nuances to two things in our chat. So there you go, guys.
Yeah, it seems like the Duxbury documentation is really extensive.
Yeah, sometimes it is extensive, but sometimes it's hard to kind of flow the thought process sometimes. So I find
Mm,
that that search feature kind of connects the dots when sometimes the links don't do it themselves.
that makes sense. Does anyone else have any either questions, something they learned, something they want to share with folks? We've got a few more minutes left of a trick that you have when you're working with math. We'd love to hear from you.
I cannot wait to use idle PTIMs. I'm gonna name my next pet that, I think.
I know, I was just thinking that. I love that. All right.
We want to stop recording.
Yes, we'll go ahead and
Thanks, everyone.
stop the recording.